Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Morel Vargas, and I am a program specialist with the CEO's Sustainability Division, working on our county's climate action plan. Thank you for attending our last part of our brown bag lunch series. This is going to be the end of the 2022 version, and we're thinking of possibly expanding this out to a 2023 version. So be on the lookout for an email later on about your feedback about this and suggestions. But yes, just a little bit more about our Brown Bag Lunch series. It aims to introduce our county employees about sustainability initiatives and programs that the Sustainability Division and other agencies are doing, and how you can get involved or know about the knowledge that we provide for you to incorporate in your own household. I appreciate you all joining us during your lunch period. I know it's some only half an hour or an hour, so we want to make sure that this series is short and informative so that you can get the best out of it and still have enough time to enjoy the rest of your lunch. I just want to go over some housekeeping reminders. We will record the webinars and post them on our Employee Sustainability Hub SharePoint site. I'll put the link in the chat and after this, and you can view all the recordings we've had, and this one too will be there. And also, if you have any questions, please use a chat. We try to go quickly on the focus on the conversation of it, and then we'll have a Q&A section afterwards. But if you put the questions in the chat, we can answer them faster than waiting until the end. Great. So for this session that we have today, we'll be talking about water conservation and what you can do to reduce your water consumption. And who we have here today is Lynn Rodriguez, who manages many of our county's water grants and is the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County project managers. So thank you, Lynn, for joining us today. And my first question that I've asked other people is, just what is it that you do at the county? What does it mean, your job title, and just other experiences you had before coming here to Ventura County?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Morel. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you everybody for taking time out of your lunch hour to freshen up your knowledge about the subject of water. So as Morel said, I manage the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County, which is a program through the CEO's office, actually. So I'm in the same sort of department with the Sustainability Division, and do oversee a lot of grant programs. And the program itself is called Integrated Regional Water Management. So that program is something that was created by the state through voter-approved water bonds going back to 2002. And in this county, we've received $94 million in grant funding for 42 different types of projects. And water use efficiency or water conservation is included in that. That's some of the work that's been done across the county. So the program is for all our stakeholders. It's not a county program per se. The county is very involved, of course, and helps to fund it, but it's really about working with our water districts, our sanitary districts, our local environmental nonprofit groups, underserved communities. We have a broad set of stakeholders, and we work with some state and federal agencies as well. So that's the role that I play now. Back early in the 80s, it was when I first came to Ventura County the first time around, and I was working on water resources management and specifically water use efficiency. We had a regional water conservation, water efficiency program back then, and I managed that. And that was during a big drought that started in 1986 and went through 91. And then around 91, I moved up to Santa Barbara County, started a program there similar to the one that was with Ventura County. And then I came back to the county in 2005 to work on the Integrated Regional Water Management Program. So water conservation is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I worked on a long time. And I live in the area, so I definitely have seen a lot of droughts and a lot of water shortage periods and cutbacks. I happen to live in Santa Barbara, and we've had, rationing and restrictions over the years. So it does require you to be creative in how you use your water and mindful of the shortages that we can face if we're not all doing our best to be efficient. So we all need to care about water. I think probably I don't need to tell anybody that we have limited water supplies. We don't have an unlimited amount of water that we can waste. Wasteful use of water doesn't happen so much anymore, but you can still see it. You can still see people running their, landscape watering irrigation system, and it runs off down the street. You can sometimes see farmers wasting water, but for the most part, people are pretty efficient now compared to the way things were back in the 80s when I started working in this field. Our water in Ventura County comes from a couple of different sources. Most of the water in the county is groundwater, which serves, primarily agriculture, but some communities like Fillmore and Santa Paula are almost entirely or are entirely groundwater. But that's our biggest source. Unfortunately, our groundwater resources have been depleted or overdrafted over the years, so we can't continue that amount of water use forever. We also have imported water brought here from Northern California that actually comes to us through a water district in Thousand Oaks called the Cayugas Municipal Water District, and that imported state water serves some or all of communities on the southeast end of the county, like Simi Valley, Moore Park, Camarillo, portions of Oxnard. And that water is the most expensive water that we have in the county. And it's also very subject to cutbacks during statewide drought conditions. So currently we are only able to receive 5% of the water we get from state water in this county. And that means we have to depend more on other sources like surface water and groundwater. And then our other big source of water is surface water from places like Piru Reservoir out of Piru and the Casitas Reservoir, Lake Casitas. And sometimes that water is directly sent to customers, and sometimes it's actually used to recharge groundwater basins. And so we're pretty creative about how we use and distribute water throughout the county. We tend to blend high quality water with lower quality water. Groundwater can be lower in quality, depending on where it's from, how deep it's drawn from, or what aquifer. So that blending is something that is used a lot in the county. So depending on where you live, your water might be from all three of those sources or only one. And we also do use recycled wastewater, not yet for potable purposes, but it's used to recharge groundwater basins and to irrigate crops, some crops, and also landscape. So for example, City of Ventura uses a fair amount of recycled water on their parks. And you'll see that in other parts of the county as well. So, and that's increasing. We'll see more and more recycled wastewater as time goes on. So that's just a quick summary of where our water comes from. It's obviously, it's not cheap. I mean, the cheapest water in this county is once it's been treated, which adds additional costs to the delivery of the raw water. You're going to be paying, it's not inexpensive what you get. And anywhere from, $300 per acre foot, which is, as you probably know, an acre of land with a foot of water on it, up to state water, I believe, is now up to about $1,200 an acre foot. So it's quite expensive. And if we were ever to develop desalination of the seawater for water supply, which some communities like Santa Barbara are already doing, that cost is into the $3,000 and higher for. As you can imagine, there's a lot of energy used in developing desalinated seawater. So obviously it goes without saying that we have limited water resources. While we are growing across the state, we've had a lot of growth in the last 30, 40 years, but our per capita water use has been actually going down. And that is because over time, we're much more efficient with our water than we used to be. 40 years ago, it would take 10 gallons to flush a toilet, and now we're down to 1.6 or less. Faucets are more efficient, washing machines are more efficient. So the plumbing codes and the regulations have changed a lot to make water use more efficient. Farmers are implementing a lot more strategies for keeping their water demand as low as possible, very closely monitoring their weather conditions, their soil moisture, putting water out on the crops using drip irrigation instead of spraying into the atmosphere where a lot of that water is lost, or just flood irrigation used to be popular, where you would just put it in the furrows and some of it would end up on the plants and the rest of it would kind of go out to sea or back into the groundwater. So we're a lot more efficient with how we use water. But there's still a lot more that can be done. And I would say, most of you probably know that the biggest amount of water used in the urban uses, for communities, for residences and commercial, is landscape, especially because we've got pretty efficient plumbing fixtures and appliances now. So it's the plants that tend to use the most water. There's a lot more human interaction with that. People can not turn off their sprinkler when they should, or not program their controller properly, and they can end up using more water than they need to. So there's human behavior more involved in landscape. And of course, it matters where you are. If you live in Simi Valley, your plants need a lot more water to thrive than they do in Oxnard. So just the climate is so much warmer and drier as you get inland. So there's a lot that can be done. And I am going to share at least one resource with you in a little bit, but I just was interested to hear from you all, what kinds of steps you're already taking yourself to try to be even more efficient with water in your own homes, or if you happen to have an association with a business, or if you work at the county in the Parks Department or the GS General Services Agency, you might have some things to share too. So does anybody have any thing they want to share about what you're already doing?
And what you can do is you can put your responses in the chat, or use the raise hand feature that we have, and then we can allow you to talk and you can give your response that way. So either way, however you feel comfortable. Yeah, while we wait for responses, I wanted to go back, as you were mentioning about just advances in technology, about desalinization, and I remember hearing that back a few years ago, and I thought that was such a cool technology. But for those that are that maybe have not heard about it before, just kind of wanted to give a bit of information of what that is. So, and Lynn, feel free to jump in. And basically, it's a form of technology where, as the word says, we're able to get water that has a lot of salt in it, and just through some form of technology, I'm not sure if it's osmosis or so, but you're able to take out the salt so that it's able to be potable. And then I know there's some questions about what happens there with the salt that's pretty concentrated afterwards. How do we safely dispose of it? So that's just a little bit of what I know about desalinization. So Lynn, feel free to jump in more.
Well, and I can add to that, because another source of water that we've been developing, and a lot of that funding has come from that grant that I mentioned, the IRWM grant program, is for treating brackish groundwater. And brackish groundwater is lower in salt than the ocean, but still very high in salts, and can't really be used for irrigating crops or landscaping. And so it ends up not getting utilized. In other words, it just sits there in the ground and can't be used. And so we do have an exciting project in this county. It's a pipeline system that the Cayugas Municipal Water District has installed with a lot of the grant funding that I mentioned. That pipeline is connected to desalters that are desalting or taking salt out of the brackish groundwater. And that new water developed by removing the salts can be used for beneficial uses, and the wasted, or the brine that comes off of that, is put out into the ocean. So that line, it used to be called the brine line, but sounds better to say salinity management pipeline. That water is actually, there's an ocean outfall. So those higher concentration of salts are put out to sea, so to speak. And the energy use, the reverse osmosis process to take salts out of brackish groundwater, is less energy intensive than seawater. Seawater is about 3 times the salinity of a lot of our brackish groundwater. And it's highly, highly energy intensive to remove salts from seawater. And that's where why the cost is so high. And there's environmental impacts from pulling water from the ocean. But yes, we are definitely using salt removal to improve our water quality to make it usable for consumption.
Nice. Thank you for that further explanation. I don't know about the brackish water, which is, yeah, good to know. And imagine, yeah, with sea ocean water, it's much harder just with the higher salinity content.
Yeah. Has anybody put in any ideas?
I haven't seen any responses in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can, yeah, just general practices that people can do.
Yeah. So, well, obviously things at home, it's pretty straightforward. You know, don't leave the water running. You know, don't multiple flush the toilet or put trash down the toilet, and use flushing to get rid of waste that doesn't belong in the toilet. And you know, using full loads for dishwashers and washing machines, not running it with just a few things. Even with the high efficiency washing machines and efficient dishwashers, they still use a fair amount of water. So that kind of goes without saying. Showers and baths, you know, the length of the shower and the bath, you know, or the depth of the bath, those are all things that it can be reduced. I know the popular phrase in the 70s during a big drought, I was in college then, but, you know, kind of funny little terminologies that would come out of water agencies, or little, I don't know what the word is, but, you know, save water, shower with a friend. You know, it's that kind of promotional stuff has been around for a really long time. And I haven't heard that one in 40 years, but but really now, as I said, you know, there's some human behavior, how you use water in your home and indoors, that can really make a difference. But really the biggest bang for the buck is outside. And it really, if you do have landscape to manage at your home, if you are lucky enough to have a yard, then there's definitely ways to use water very efficiently. And farmers have figured this out a long time ago. It's basically put the water only where it's needed, near the roots or around the root zone, and not spraying it, you know, over the tops of plants, which can also be harmful to the plants. It can get mold and other kinds of things. So another practice that also used to be very common, and for a while it wasn't common, and I think it's coming back into vogue, is gray water reuse, where you take, you can be soapy water, but you know, not toilet water, but water from other indoor uses like your washing machine or your bath, and it can be distributed outdoors if you follow the right guidelines. And the county actually has gray water use ordinances, and you can purchase systems that will temporarily hold the water in a tank. And then the best thing to do is distribute it through a subterranean French drain, where it can water the roots of the plants and minimize the amount of, you know, bacteria or virus that might have been in contact with someone's body, so it's not spraying it on the surface. So that's still a really good approach. And also rainwater capture. Some of you may be aware that the county gives out rain barrels every year for a reduced cost, and you can capture the water running off of your gutter. And I mean, of course, you can use some of that water inside if you want, but mostly people use that for their plants, for irrigation. None of that can be stored too long in sort of an open container system, because then you might end up with mosquitoes or other vectors that you don't want in your yard. But rainwater capture is a really good practice, and cisterns, some of them are actually cisterns that can be underground, actually buried tanks. But what's good about that is you can capture the water when it does rain hard. And it's surprising. I mean, if you ever put a bucket out and collect rainwater, you can fill up a bucket pretty quickly with what seems like a little amount of rain. So those kind of capture devices are really helpful. And with climate change, we're predicting that we're going to get less rain events, probably about the same amount of rain, but it's going to come in fewer events with a lot heavier rainfall. And so designing systems that can capture that excess water and get you through some of your summer water needs for your landscape is a really smart practice. And that's just kind of more for home. I don't know, and there are lots of rebate programs. Local water districts and cities are always trying to incentivize people being able to use less water with devices and appliances and little mini weather stations or irrigation system controllers that help you, dial in a lower water use instead of just deciding that you should water for half an hour a day, which is probably too much. It kind of dials it down to a more efficient level if you're not aware of how much to water. Those are really valuable. And on a larger scale, that's what parks and golf courses and farms use, is a method. In one way or another, they're trying to measure how much they put down with how much their plants need. So you're only irrigating the park, the grass, or the crop with what's needed. And you measure that by looking at the soil moisture and looking at how much has evaporated from using a weather station. You can determine how much water evaporated from the plants over a period of time. And then you're just replacing what the plant needs. So it's a little more high-tech way to manage. But as we get shorter and shorter of water, and it doesn't take an expert to predict that the way things are going with climate change, we're going to see more and more restrictions on how we use our water. And we don't want to lose especially our trees, our landscape trees, and we need our trees for cooling. So there's going to be more and more creative ways to make sure that we don't lose those particularly valuable parts of our landscapes during our extreme drought conditions that we are definitely seeing more and more of. And farmers are often blamed for being inefficient, or that they use so much water and they're wasting so much water. But of course, agriculture is an important part of our economy, but also we all eat. So I think my personal experience with the growers in Ventura County is that they are very advanced, and they're using all those strategies and techniques available to minimize their water use, because they don't want to spend money that they don't need to spend on over irrigating. So it's good to know that our farmers are very mindful of that. And they're already, we have depletion of our groundwater basins, and when it's gone, it's gone. So I mean, we can recharge our basins, but if you mine a deep water basin that's not getting much recharge, that's not reversible. So a lot of energy has been spent on that. In a lot of schools, like you see, there's a lot of new technology coming to schools. You'll see that, the solar roofs over parking areas. The same is true with water. Schools are becoming more efficient with irrigation, if they're even irrigating at all. During the drought, unfortunately, a lot of school grounds just, they don't irrigate anymore, which is kind of sad. Some of the lawn areas are a place where people used to enjoy sitting or playing Frisbee or whatever, and now you can't do that anymore. So trying to maintain our quality of life while we still protect the resource for future. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess we're almost out of time, and I did a lot of talking, but.
No, thank you, Lynn. I think you mentioned some really good points there, and some, one misconception I think that you pointed out about your dishwashers, even though they're more efficient, and sometimes they'll say like, oh, it can detect how much water it needs. Like, it's still very important to be conscious of trying to not put too much dishes, or try to put more dishes in there, because it won't be as accurate in your, you still be conscious about that. And thank you for mentioning about, trying to still have the same good quality of life, but just being smarter about that, because with everything that's happening now with the effects of climate change, I feel like there's been a lot of those conversations of what should we prioritize, saving water or trees or something like that, similar conversations. But it's important to note, don't try to choose one or the other. We want to try to be smart about it and be able to still preserve our trees with the limited water we have, by not using too much water consumption and other stuff. So yeah, I've heard also similar techniques too of as you're saying about flushing toilets, about the whole like if it's yellow, let it mellow. And I
Yes,
know
right.
not a lot of people may be comfortable with them, but it's something I was very surprised. Like, whoa, don't flush the toilet if you've only peed and you
Yeah,
can wait a while.
right.
Yeah.
So if I can just share my screen, and I'll share a website that is a product of a lot of entities around the county that have funded it. And it's a really great resource. And it's just beautiful. Everything that's in here is helpful if you happen to have a garden, if you're lucky enough to have a yard and you want to plant it in a way that's both, honoring what is native to the area, as well as areas that are not planted, like commons, or rather not paved, but pervious surfaces like patios and walkways. This website, which is VenturaCountyGardening.com, was developed by a local Garden Soft is the name of the company. They're based in Thousand Oaks, actually, and they have developed this type of website all across California. There's one of these websites developed by Garden Soft almost everywhere in California. And there's, how to water, how much to water, information about irrigation, and, how to adjust your irrigation different times of the year. There's all kinds of fact sheets, how to deal with the drought. For example, in my home, I have some very beautiful old mature oak trees in the backyard, and I worry about them when there's 2 or 3 really dry years in a row. I do not want to lose those oak trees. And so there's information here. I also have found other helpful resources outside this site, but really, really good information. So I highly recommend, if you are a gardener, if you have access to a garden or have one in your yard, this is super helpful. There's, how to convert your lawn into more efficient landscaping. You probably know that lawns are really the highest water using, not only because of the lawn itself needing more water, but also because they tend to be overwatered. And when you see sprinklers running and then somebody's system is not set properly and water starts to run off, that's usually happening in a lawn and not in say a native plant garden or something. It's usually lawn is the culprit because it's spray irrigated for the most part. There's all kinds of resources, and there's actually, what's really cool is galleries. I'll just share really quick. Galleries of plants. These are all, or gardens rather, these are all taken, all these photos are from someplace in Ventura County. And there's categories: backyards, front yards, patios. Really, really interesting. And then there's an incredible plant list where you can look for plant material, and it's, a lot of them are native plants. They're not entirely native plants, but really great resource. So I just thought I would share that. And the County of Ventura helped fund it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing this website. I know I'm going to be definitely using this as we're thinking of taking out our grass on our lawn. That's definitely being used a lot of water with our HOA. So thank you for sharing this resource. If in this last minute that we have here, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put that in the chat. I'm noticing now that there's no raise hand feature. So any questions you have, put in the chat, and then I can allow you all to talk to explain yourself a bit more. But as we wait for that, just wanted to say thank you, Lynn. Like, thank you so much for being a speaker and coming out today and giving us just a little bit of your knowledge that you have with all your work that you've done in water conservation and then watersheds and all.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want me to put the website in the chat?
Oh, I just put it into the chat. So.
Oh, you did? Okay, sorry.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, I see no questions yet for on the chat. So yeah, we'll just conclude this last brown bag presentation. Again, thank you, Lynn, for joining us today. And I'll be sending out an email later, early next week, of just a survey of your feedback for these webinars we'd had, and then possible topics for next year. So thank you all for joining us and sticking around. Yeah, and see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Hey.
And if anyone has any questions for me or sticking around, let me know too. Yeah, I'll be here for another minute.